Over 2/3 of the world's surface is covered by water. Despite their enormous size, even the vast oceans have not escaped the ravages of man. The thoughtless dumping of garbage at sea has had an enormous impact on the environment. Each year, abandoned fishing nets kill tens of thousands of seals. Countless seabirds die from eating man-made materials thrown over the side of ships. And every tide brings a new deposit of marine-generated waste onto our beaches. Plastic bottles, empty drinks cans, discarded syringes, medicines, dunnage, and even pyrotechnics like these distress flares are washed ashore. Ships are not responsible for all the garbage that finds its way into the sea. However, international surveys suggest that the marine industry generates a significant proportion. For instance, the International Chamber of Shipping has calculated that each seafarer creates about 4 kilograms of garbage each day, of which most is domestic refuse. Of course, an individual ship produces even more waste. The Centre for Marine Conservation has worked out that an average cargo vessel produces some 80 tons of garbage each year. Given the size of the ocean, these amounts may seem trivial, but multiply them by all the ships, their crews and passengers, and the quantities become extremely large. In fact, the enormous volume of garbage discharged at sea was getting out of control. Consequently, the signatory nations of the International Maritime Organization resolved to adopt stringent amendments to MARPOL 73/78. The objective was to categorize what could and could not be discharged at sea. Significantly, they added a new regulation to Annex 5. Effective from the 1st of July 1997 for new ships, and from the 1st of July 1998 for all other vessels, this compels ships of 400 tons and above, and all vessels certified to carry 15 persons or more, to implement a planned garbage management system and maintain a garbage record book. As an important part of the ship's safety management system, this must provide specific written procedures for collecting, storing, processing and disposing of waste. MARPOL Annex 5 is not simply a set of guidelines.
And then your oil record book, that's not completed correctly. I discussed that with the Chief Engineer.
It is backed up by the full force of international law. This provides harsh penalties for any infringement. Illegal dumping of ship's waste will result in severe penalties and could lead to a substantial fine or even imprisonment. The first priority of an effective garbage plan is to cut down on ship-generated waste. The second is to ensure that the discharge of waste is carried out safely and in a way that will not harm the environment. A designated person, typically an officer, is in charge of carrying out the plan. It is the responsibility of the designated person to log each garbage discharge or completed incineration into the garbage record book. Like the ship's log, the garbage record book is a legal requirement and must be available for inspection by Port State Control or other authorized officials.
That's the latest entries, right?
Yes.
There are several types of garbage, and each one requires different treatment. Food wastes include any spoiled or unspoiled fruits, meat products, vegetables, or other food scraps originating from the galley and the dining areas. Domestic waste is the garbage generated in the living quarters of the ship. A plastic is defined as any object that contains polymers. This can include obvious items like plastic bottles and disposable styrofoam beakers, but there are many other products that contain plastic. For instance, a thin plastic coating is often applied to milk and fruit juice cartons. Some ropes, paints, and electrical components can also contain plastic polymers. Cargo-associated waste covers all materials that have become wastes through use on board a ship for cargo stowage and handling. Typical examples are dunnage, shoring, pallets, lining and packing materials, plywood, cardboard, and steel strapping. Maintenance waste is the materials collected in the engine department and the deck department while maintaining and operating the vessel. These might include soot, machinery deposits, scraped paint, deck sweepings, scrap metal, oily and chemical wastes, and rags. Oily rags are rags that have been saturated with oil. Contaminated rags have been saturated with a harmful substance. These include noxious chemicals and cleaning fluids. For shore-based disposal, these wastes can be broadly categorized as either biodegradable or as persistent. Biodegradable waste is any garbage that will break down naturally without leaving a dangerous residue that will pollute the environment. Persistent waste is garbage requiring additional processing or special treatment. This includes items such as plastic bottles and glass. The disposal of plastics at sea is strictly prohibited. Although in certain circumstances biodegradable garbage can be dumped at sea, Annex 5 recommends that the preferred means of disposal should be at a port reception facility. The successful implementation of a garbage management plan requires that everyone on board contributes to a policy of good housekeeping.
Sharon 1, Sharon 2.
you should aim to reduce the amount of waste. Stores should have the minimum packaging, and that should be recyclable. It is the duty of all seafarers to cut down the sources of garbage. This means careful attention should be given to limiting disposable articles like cups, dishes, towels and rags, and where possible, replacing them with washable items. Effort should also be made to reuse dunnage, shoring, lining and packing, and other materials used for cargo stowage. The procedures for handling and storing garbage will depend on the nature and size of the vessel. An ocean-going cruise ship will generate far more domestic garbage than a cargo vessel. However, a passenger vessel is usually equipped with shipboard garbage processing equipment. And purpose-built garbage storage space. For cargo ships, especially those bound on long-haul voyages, such facilities may not be available. A well-designed garbage management plan must separate waste handling into distinct phases: collection, processing, storage, and disposal. At the collection stage, it is essential to sort the garbage and separate it according to the final disposal route. Plastics and plastics mixed with non-plastic garbage, which must always be delivered to a port reception facility. Food wastes that in general have the least impact on marine life. And finally, other garbage, like wood and paper, that is not harmful to the environment. The receptacles should be clearly marked and made available at appropriate locations throughout the vessel. Where possible, provide the opportunity to recycle used materials. Separate paper products, glass, metal and the like into specialized containers for reprocessing on shore. Some waste requires specialized handling. Treat medical waste, including sharps, scalpels and needles, with special care. Unprotected, contaminated sharps could injure personnel if thoughtlessly mixed with other wastes. Because all medical wastes are potentially infectious, their storage and disposal should follow the procedures laid down by the ship's owner. Food waste is not always classified as environmentally harmless. Some countries impose specific restrictions on foodstuffs, especially if there is a danger that it might carry pests or diseases. The regulations may demand the incineration or sterilization of the waste. Keep this garbage separate from other wastes so that it can be processed according to the laws of the receiving country. And even here, countries like the USA insist that this waste be delivered in biodegradable sacks. Although oily and contaminated rags are loosely grouped under other garbage, they are subject to special conditions laid out elsewhere in MARPOL. Waste rags must either be incinerated or kept on board until discharged to a port reception facility. Under no circumstances is it acceptable to discharge at sea biodegradable wastes contaminated with plastics, oil, or other persistent man-made materials. That means you cannot even discharge food waste wrapped in plastic sacks into the ocean. All shipboard members are responsible for ensuring that garbage is safely deposited in the right bins. Failure to do so will compromise the garbage management plan. This could result in a breach of the MARPOL regulations and an ISM violation. Not only is this a disciplinary offence, it may lead to a substantial fine for the ship owners. Processing the garbage will reduce its volume. This is achieved through compaction, comminution, or incineration. A compactor compresses the waste into a dense block of material. Once processed, the garbage takes up less storage space and is easier to handle. A comminutor grinds food and other waste into small particles no more than 25 millimeters in diameter. MARPOL guidelines recommend that ships should grind all food waste because this pre-treatment accelerates the natural biological processes that break down the garbage. Grinding is always recommended, even when a vessel is more than 12 miles from the nearest land. Incineration reduces waste to ash. However, this does not always result in a residue that can be safely discharged at sea. The ash from some plastic products contains heavy metals and other undesirable toxins. Store these residues separately on board and only discharge them to a suitable port reception facility. Due to the potential for atmospheric pollution, most countries place strict controls on the operation of incinerators in port, and many ban their use altogether when docked. Storing garbage safely is important because ship-generated waste can represent a hazard. It is not acceptable to store waste in passageways where it might block escape routes and create a health risk. Stow the different types of garbage in separate, clearly marked bags. And ensure all garbage is made secure so there is no danger of an accidental discharge. It is recommended to discharge as much of the ship's waste as possible to a port reception facility. However, this is not always possible. In these instances, some garbage may have to be disposed of at sea. Even then, very strict regulations control what type of garbage can be discharged at sea. As an absolute rule, ships are not allowed to dispose of any plastics, No garbage may be discharged if the ship is less than 3 nautical miles from the nearest land. At 3 nautical miles or more, food wastes and other permitted garbage can be discharged at sea if they have passed through a comminutor and the ground garbage particles are less than 25 millimetres in diameter. At a distance of no less than 12 nautical miles, it is permitted to discharge unprocessed food wastes, paper products, rags, glass, metal, bottles, crockery, and similar refuse. It is only at a distance of 25 nautical miles or more that larger items such as dunnage or lining and packing materials can be discharged. Though even here, shore-based disposal to a port facility is still the preferred option. For the purposes of Annex 5 of MARPOL, some parts of the world's oceans are designated as special areas. These special areas include the Mediterranean Sea, the Baltic, Black and Red Seas, the Gulfs area, the North Sea, the Antarctic, and the wider Caribbean region. In these regions, a far more restrictive code of practice is enforced. As well as prohibiting the disposal of plastics, it is expressly forbidden to discharge all other garbage with the exception of food waste. In most of the special areas, unprocessed food waste can be discharged if the vessel is at least 12 nautical miles from the nearest land. In the wider Caribbean region, food wastes that have been ground into particles of less than 25 millimetres can be discharged if the vessel is at least 3 nautical miles from land. The Antarctic is an exception. Here, no garbage may be disposed of at sea at all. Ships must store all waste on board and land it at a suitable port reception facility. Whenever garbage is discharged, it must be recorded in the garbage record book. In all cases, this must have the date and time, the category of garbage, the estimated amount in cubic meters, and the signature of the officer in charge of the operation. If the discharge is to a port facility, then that information must be included. Alternatively, if the disposal takes place at sea, the latitude and longitude of the ship must be noted in the record book. The garbage record book must be kept for a minimum of 2 years and be open for inspection at all times. Failure to comply with the rules and keep scrupulously accurate records could result in a heavy fine or even a prison sentence. Operating an effective garbage management plan is not just a legal requirement. Seafarers have a responsibility to the environment too. Reducing marine waste keeps the world's oceans cleaner. Our beaches will be safer, and less garbage in the seas will help conserve fish and marine mammals. Garbage management for a cleaner and safer world.